Hi guys, how are you? I hope that you're okay. I hope that you have been having fun during your weekend, and I hope that you have the opportunity to do your works on time. Okay, so something that I've been having problems is that you've been texting me in the middle of the night. You've been asking questions that I have already answered, and you're not working in the order that I asked. So I'm gonna give you a couple instructions in Spanish so you can finally understand, because you seem to not understand English, which is very embarrassing because you have been my students for 3 years so far. So I'm worried that you're not speaking English like you do in school. Número uno, deje de subir asignaciones al stream. No es para eso el stream. Usted va a subir asignaciones una vez a la semana, los viernes cuando yo abra la plataforma, y usted sube todo con portada, con las fechas. Número 2. Deje de mandarme asignaciones por WhatsApp. El WhatsApp no es para eso. Número 3. Deje de escribirme al WhatsApp después de las 3 de la tarde. Las 11:30 es una hora no aceptable para contestar preguntas. Número 4. De instrucciones de cómo van a descargar los libros. Sus papás me preguntan dónde están. Yo les respondo con un video en español. Pero ustedes les pueden ayudar también. Están en Classwork y los van a descargar allí. El libro de Reading solo va a imprimir la hoja de preguntas, si así lo desea. Si sus padres le dicen que no tienen dinero para la impresión, no lo tiene que imprimir. Usted puede escribir la hoja completa de preguntas en su cuaderno. El libro de Grammar no se va a imprimir absolutamente nada. Usted va a copiar cada ejercicio de Grammar en su cuaderno. Todos los ejercicios van en el cuaderno. Nada se imprime. Y de su libro de Ready Player One tampoco se imprime nada. Usted lo va a leer en su tablet, computadora o celular. Entonces les pido por favor que cooperen porque están bien grandes ya. Recuerde que su classwork es su acumulativo. Si continúan trabajando de una manera tan equivocada, entonces va a ser bien difícil que puedan completar los puntos ideales para su clase. Este es su acumulativo, el classwork que usted me va a mandar una vez a la semana. Y como última cosa, yo ya sé cuáles son los que entran a los videos, ponen en la cámara y el micrófono apagado y se van. Esos no llegaron a clase. Aunque esté el videíto ahí, no llegaron a clase. Si yo llamé su nombre y no participó, si yo ya pasé lista y lo saludé y usted no habló, se le esperó que respondiera, no habló, usted no llegó. Si no tiene la asistencia a la clase, usted pierde su acumulativo. Entonces, para todos los niños, porque son los varones hasta ahora, que están haciendo eso, yo no les puedo ayudar en su acumulativo después. Ya ustedes saben cómo va a funcionar. Al final hay un examen basado en las clases. Si no asisten a clase, bien difícil que sepan hacer su examen al final. So it's really embarrassing that I have to speak in Spanish, but you seem to not understand at all. You are very lost and you're not paying attention. Hay una niña que me sigue escribiendo para preguntarme, Mister, ¿qué hay para hoy? Hijos, la plataforma tiene instrucciones y fecha. Usted se va a la fecha, dice lunes 14. Ah, dice lunes 14. Voy al video de lunes 14. Ah, lo voy a ver el video de lunes 14. Al final están las actividades. Si hay preguntas, las copio. Si no hay preguntas, no las copio. Si el maestro me dice que copie lo que está en la pizarra, lo copio. Si el maestro me dicta que haga ejercicios, los hago. Pero si la instrucción está allí, ¿por qué yo tengo que dar una instrucción individual a cada uno? Si la instrucción está escrita, sexto grado debería de tener la capacidad de comprensión. Si ustedes necesitan ayuda, me pueden escribir, así como los que me han escrito para decirme, Mister, no tengo el libro, el formato del libro no funciona, no entendí algo, ayúdeme. Pero para las cosas que ya tienen instrucciones escritas, es bien difícil. Sexto grado, por favor. Okay, so today we are going to start reading our reading book, the reading book that it's in the platform in Classwork. If you don't have it, please go download it. And we are going to read one of the stories. Now, a problem with this book is that if you go to the index, this is your index. Wait. This is your index, okay? As you can see in there, it says number 6, but we are in page number 2. According to the book, this is number 2. This page says number 2 over there. I don't know if you can see it. See, number 2, but the index says number 6. So we are going to have to be guided by the number of the stories. How? There's an index in there and you can see where every story is. It says table of contents. Table of contents have the name of every story over there. So when we see the stories over there, wait. See? Okay, so in table of contents, we have that the story that we are going to read today, it's in page number 2, Jable. See? Okay, please pay attention because I'm going to write the name of the page. And if you tell me, Mister, I don't find it. Remember, table of contents. That's where the number of the page is. Okay. So let's go. Besides the book is number, so you can see the little numbers. Jable. I'm going to start reading and then I'm going to discuss a couple of the things and at the end I'm going to discuss the page. So have your notebooks on hand so you can recopy the questions, or if you printed the page, you just have to answer in complete sentences. Answer in print with a pencil. Don't forget, please. Okay. Jable. Have you ever been to a baseball game in another country or watched one on television? Alex and Emily Godfrey had been in Japan with their parents for nearly a week. I don't know why Japanese people love baseball so much. They were there to visit their mother's old college roommate, who had moved to Japan after college to teach English. She had planned to come home after a few years, but she had fallen in love with the country and with the man who would eventually be her husband. That would be really interesting, right? You go to Japan, you do a couple classes, and then you stay teaching in Japan, and then you fall in love with someone in Japan, and you end up living in their culture, in those beautiful houses, in those streets with the street food. It would be amazing. Number 2. Oh, the paragraphs are numbers, so we can follow the reading by the paragraph. What's our plan for the afternoon? Asked Alex after lunch one day. Well, said Mr. Ito, we have tickets for a 4 o'clock baseball game. How does that sound? I had no idea baseball was popular in Japan, replied Alex. Me neither. That takes us to professional games a few times a year at home, said Emily. Alex and I keep a list of cities we've visited where we had a chance to go to a game. I had no idea that Tokyo would ever be on our list. The Itos, that's the Japanese people, and the Godfreys prepared for the afternoon events. Just a few hours later, they found themselves standing inside the stadium among a crowd of excited fans. Yeah! What are the names of the teams that are playing today? Asked Alex, looking around curiously. The home team is the Yakult Swallows. They will be playing the Hiroshima Toyo Carp, said Mr. Ito. Baseball isn't my cup of tea. That means that it's not their favorite. But this promises to be a good game. The two families found their seats in the bleachers. Alex and Emily grinned as they listened to all the noisemakers around them. Some people were hitting together plastic bats, and others were yelling through megaphones that looked as though they had been hinged together. They were very excited. Are those cheerleaders? Asked Emily. She was referring to a group of men on the ball field who led the crowd in chants and cheers. So the cheerleaders are usually the ones with the pom-poms that give cheers to the team. But in this case, these cheerleaders were men. Mr. Ito nodded. I forget that Americans don't have cheerleaders for baseball games. It also probably seems unusual that they are all men. That's just one of the differences between American and Japanese baseball culture. Once the game began, Emily and Alex became quickly engrossed. The game itself didn't seem much different at all from the American baseball games they had attended. They were surprised, though, to the people waving American flags from time to time. Mr. Ito explained, Japanese teams are each allowed to have 3 foreign players. When American players come up to bat, their fans show support by waving your country's flag. So it's very interesting because the Japanese culture loves North American culture, but also they have foreign players. So if the player to the baseball game, it's Brazilian, they're going to wave some Brazil flag, but as much as they are North American, they're waving North American flags. Mr. Ito explained, Oh, sorry, that's 13 again. Mr. Ito explained, Japanese teams are each allowed to have 3 foreign players. When American players come to bat, their fans show support by waving your country's flag. In between innings, Mr. Ito bought Alex and Emily a snack. Some vendors sold pretzels, very normal in the United States, popcorn, very normal in here too, and hot dogs, very normal in here in the States. But Alex and Emily decided to try one of the Japanese alternatives. I would do the same. Mr. Ito's held they selected yakisoba noodles, flavored with ginger and soy sauce. That sounds so yummy. It's because I like in anime shows, those Japanese cartoons. They're constantly eating soups with the little sticks. And I can't. I tried. But yakisoba noodles sound like some sort of kind of like a soup, like a noodle soup, but they're flavored with ginger, which is very spicy, and soy sauce. I don't imagine nobody having some sort of soup in a football game over here. Would be messy. Maybe someone pushes you. I don't know if you ever been in the stadium, in Estadio Nacional here. I would never go. They say that they threw piss at you in cups. That is, oh no. And they always end up fighting. I mean, I don't do much of that, and I don't criticize the people who does it. If you love going to the stadium and that didn't happen to you, great, amazing. But the stories that I have heard are very tragic all the time. At the end of the game, the Godfreys and the Itos piled back into the car to head home. Alex and Emily were tired, but their minds were racing with all they had seen that day. Did you have a good day, kids? Asked Mrs. Godfrey, turning to Alex and Emily. They nodded. I wish we could go to J-ball games at home too. J-ball means Japanese baseball, said Emily. After today, I have a feeling that American baseball might never quite as interesting again. So because she saw so many interesting things, she thinks that it's incredible and she would like to experience it again. Okay, so let's go to the activities. The activities are in page number 3, okay? So remember, if you printed the page, you just have to answer in complete sentences. And if you don't, you can write everything in your notebook. Okay. Why were the Godfreys in Japan? Remember that they were visiting someone that went to do something but ended up doing something different. So you can write in there, the Godfreys are in Japan because they are... Where is the answer to that? In paragraph number 1, it says, Alex and Emily Godfrey had been in Japan with their parents for nearly a week. They were there to... and that's the answer. Remember, complete sentences. Number 2, what do you think Emily meant when she said American baseball may never be quite as interesting again? So remember that she saw so many things. People eating hot dogs and popcorn and pretzels, that's normal. But people eating yakisoba noodles, soup in the baseball game, and then cheerleaders that wear men, hey, give me a J. Usually cheerleaders are women. And they wear like small skirts and they decorate their hair. But in this case, these were men. And usually in the States, baseball doesn't have cheerleaders. Basketball has some cheerleaders, I guess. And American football has, but not baseball. So why do you think that it's not going to be interesting again? You can write, Emily thinks that it's not going to be quite interesting again because she... You write your answer. Number 3, what is one way American and Japanese baseball are similar? What is one way that they are different? So you can write in there. They are similar because in both games they eat, and they are different because only in Japan they eat in the game. Remember what they eat? Number 4, do you think that Alex and Emily will go to another J-ball, Japanese baseball, game if they have a chance? Why or why not? So do you think they like it? They loved it. They said that baseball is not going to be the same after what they saw. So I would say that they would want to go again. So I can write, Alex and Emily will want to go to another game because they saw so many Also, they ate, and it was so different than the baseball in the. So those would be your answers. Later we have, circle the word that best completes each sentence. Alex and Emily decided to try food that they would not be space to find at an American game. So what do you think would be the word? Allowed, likely, or impressed? So Alex and Emily decided to try the food that they would not be allowed, that they would not be likely to find, or that they would not be impressed to find. I mean, and then if you don't really not understand the sentence, let's eliminate. Allowed. Allowed means that you are permitted to do something. Are you permitted to have soup in the stadium? Yes. Nobody does it, so it's not the first. And then likely, that they would not be likely to find. Likely, it's a connection word that tells you that it's a possibility to do. So, are they not, is there a possibility that they wouldn't find it in an American game, the yakisoba noodles? Yes, it would be kind of impossible. So likely sounds like a good answer. But then, Alex and Emily decide to try food that they would not be impressed to find. I mean, they were very impressed. So it's neither impressed or allowed. So the answer is likely. So as you can see, it's not always about knowing what is correct, but also knowing what is not correct. So as much as we eliminated the two that are incorrect, we have the one that is correct. Alex and Emily decide to try food that they would not be likely to find at an American game. Number 6. The Godfreys are blank to learn how American and Japanese baseball are different. The Godfreys are curious, refusing, or apprehensive. Apprehensive means that you're not really convinced that you want to do something. So were the Godfreys not really convinced? I mean, they went to baseball games in the States, so they're convinced that baseball is their thing. So apprehensive, I don't think is the answer. The Godfreys are refusing to learn? No, because they were very interesting. The Godfreys are curious? I don't know, you'll have to choose. Number 7. The noisemakers are a popular blank at Japanese baseball games. The noisemakers are a popular explanation, resource, custom. Now, a resource is a source of something. For an example, if I tell you, you have to do a research, an investigation, the resources are encyclopedias and Wikipedia. That's a resource, where the information comes from. So, noisemakers are a resource. No, they don't give you information. A custom is something that you are accustomed, in redundance, to do. For an example, it's a custom in Honduras to have coffee and bread for breakfast. Everybody does it. In the States, little kids don't have coffee. When you tell them that everybody in Honduras takes coffee, they're kind of impressed because it's not something that is very common for them. Something also that there is not very common that is a custom in Honduras is tortillas. Tortillas is a Hispanic dish. So when you go to a restaurant in the States maybe, and you tell them, and I want 3 tortillas, they're like, what are tortillas? Because it's not a custom for them. That's not something that is common. That's not part of their culture. In here, a custom is to listen to some music, specific kinds of music. They're not the same custom in the States. So a custom is something that is typical from a place. So noisemakers are a popular custom in the Japanese bowls, or a resource of information, or an explanation. You're gonna have to choose. Later we have, an idiom is a group of words that has a special meaning. For example, the idiom hit the hay means go to bed. Write the idiom from paragraph 8 on the next line to its meaning. So before we go to the activity, an idiom, it's like a typical phrase from a country. For an example, in here we say, el que con lobos anda, aullar aprende. That is an idiom. That means that if you go with bad people, you're gonna be bad people too. Okay? Another idiom in Honduras would be, a quien madruga, Dios le ayuda. That is an idiom for people to know that if you're early working, you're going to have more success. Not necessarily because Jesus will help you. Jesus will help you no matter what. But it'll be easier for you to work when there's not a lot of people around because it's earlier. So an idiom, it's a typical phrase from a country. So we have in there, go to the idiom in paragraph 8. It says, something of interest, something a person enjoys. Let's go to paragraph number 8. The home team is the Yakult Swallows. They will be playing the Hiroshima Toyo. Carp, said Mr. Ito. Baseball isn't my cup of tea. My cup of tea. So as you remember, I told you that my cup of tea is a preference. For an example, not necessarily talking about tea, but talking about a preference. Coffee is my cup of tea. Osmil, that's not really my cup of tea. Rice is my cup of tea. I love it. Something that makes me sick. Oh, beef. Carne asada. That is my cup of tea. So a cup of tea is a preference that you have. I can say, pink is not my cup of tea. That's not my preference. But gray is. Peanuts, they're my cup of tea. Oh, I love them. So a cup of tea is something that you prefer specifically. So if we go to the activity in page number 8, we have something of interest, something a person enjoys. That could be. Then we have, would you enjoy attending a sporting event in another country? Explain why or why not. I'm going to tell you one. Okay. So you have to write in there. Remember, complete sentences. I would enjoy attending a sporting event in another country because, or you can write, I would love to attend, my example, the races, because races is something that people does in Ohio where my friend Kevin lives, and there's a bunch of people in very small cars and they look like plastic, and there's a lot of people that runs in them very fast. It's super dusty. I'm pretty sure that I would hate it because it's sunny and it's dusty and it's messy, and there's a bunch of people eating and having some soda and maybe having some drinks, and they have it for like 3 days in a row, and the one that wins the most races in cars, because they drive cars in very high speed, kind of like Mario Kart, wins a lot of money. Now, would I like to go see it for a couple seconds? Yes, because it would be an experience for me. Why? So I can write, I would like to attend the races because I have never gone. I have never seen those cars. I haven't lived that experience yet. But if you would not enjoy it, you can write, I would not like to attend the races because it's too hot, it's too dusty, it's too sunny, it's too tired, and races is not my cup of tea, not my preference. Now, you can write about it, that's my case, but you can write about any sport. Maybe you can talk about karate or jiu-jitsu, or I don't know, basketball, or a sport that is really interesting to you. Okay, so that will be for today. That will be so far 23 minutes. If you need to rewind, you can, but you have 17 more minutes to figure out the answers of all of this. Some of you have already done it because we were doing it together, and if not, we're doing it. Remember, do not send me anything anywhere until I ask you, and stop calling me in the middle of the night. Please. 3 p.m. and we're done. Please. Friday, the platform is going to be open. There's going to be a list of all the things that you need to upload. So you need to make sure that you have all of those. In the meantime, it's nice to see you guys. Bye.